Page 116. Today we're going to study number 1, Hilchot Sefer Torah. Several halakhot in regard to Sefer Torah. Also continuing the study of securing and saving Sefer Torah in a case of crisis, fire. Also, time allow, we'll go to the second part of the page, which is a practical Hilchot Shabbat. 116, 2 lines from the bottom of the page. Tanu Rabbanan, Vayhi bin Soaron Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha. It's a statement that in the book of Bamidbar, Parashat Baalotcha, the Torah said in chapter 10, Vayhi, when the ark traveled, Moses proclaimed, raise up for Lord God, and your enemy will scatter, and those who hate you will flee before you. Asar la HaKadosh Baruch Hu simaniyot milemala ulemata, lomar she'ein ze mekoma. The Holy One, blesses He, made sign in the Torah for this portion, above and below, which is the 2 nooning you see in the Torah before and after. That is to take place because they want to tell us that that's not the correct location. Why? This text in the book of Numbers, chapter 10, begins and ends with the letter Nun. One is with the backward of the letter Nun. So there are few explanations. One is that they separate these verses from negative feelings that come before and after. That's the Talmud Tractate Shabbat, page 115, in which at that time the Israelites behaved badly, complained, acted fearful, and were weak in their faith of God. And I'm reading from one of my books, Table Talk. Furthermore, the original plan was that the Jewish people, that the Israelite, to travel a direct route to Eretz Israel in 3 short journeys with 2 stops. However, because they sinned and angered God, they were turned around, and that's the 2 nooning, and made to wander the desert for full 40 years. The later Nun that separated the verses about the journey of the ark, or also quote turn around, and some commentaries like the Noda B'Yehuda suggest that they are a reminder of the destruction of 2 temples, which is the 2 Nuns. So why they use the letter Nun in the Torah? There are 50 paragraphs from the beginning of the book of Bamidbar to those special verses. The letter Nun has numerical value to 50. So that's one school of thought. There is another school of thought that said that we explained yesterday that there are 7 Torah in that school of thought, which is Bereshit, Shmot, Vayikra, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and then in the book of Bamidbar you have the 1 section up to Vayhi bin Soaron. Vayhi bin Soaron is a separate section, and then the last section. So book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, it's basically in that school of thought 3 different Torah, and then we have a book of Dvarim. So that's the idea of the 2 nooning. So the GEMARA said here, there is a let me read here the Rashi, because I think Rashi here explained it in a very beautiful way. He said she'ein ze mekoma, we are on page 116, the top of the page, she'eina reuya lekan delav ba'alichot masaot mishtai le'eminei ela bidgalim. So because that's not the part that speaks about the journey of the Israelites. So because they have 2 noons, is like the Hebrew letters Kaf and Reish, which means that it's to tell us that that's not the right location. רבי אומר, לא מן השם הוא, אלא מפני שספר חשוב הוא בפני עצמו. Rabbi said that it's not because of that. We just discussed yesterday the 85 letters. You remember that? The 85 letters that if you have Sefer Torah, that all the letters deteriorated or erased, but you have left 85 letters, it still carries sanctity and it's considering a Torah, even we don't use it, but it carry that level of sanctity. So they said that's the idea that the Minchat Eliezer said in a responsa that if the Sefer Torah fall on the ground, God forbid, the category has to be 85 letters that wasn't erased. So that's the carry the sanctity. So the idea that the sign of are these, because this portion is considered a book unto itself. Keman Azla, who is the one who hold in that school of thought? So they said, Ahada Amar Rabbi Ishmael bar Nachman Amar Rabbi Yonatan. We are on page 116, the top of the page. Chatzva Amudei HaShiva, Elu Shiv'a Sifrei Torah Keman Kerebi. So he said, that's the Rabbi Ishmael bar Nachman said in the name of Rabbi Yonatan. There is a sentence in the book of Proverbs, chapter 9, that said as follows: with wisdom she built her house, she curved its 7 pillars. So these are 7 books of the Torah. So according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who is not the author, but the one who published the Mishnah, the oral teaching, as by his account, there are 7 books of the Torah. As we said, in the book of Numbers, there are 3. So with that, we go by the Rebbe. Man Tana de Paligale. Who is the one who disagree with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? Rabban Shimon ben Gamlielu. That's the name of the one who is Rabban Shimon ben Gamlielu. Why? Because Rabban Shimon ben Gamlielu אומר, עתידה פרשה זו שתעקר מכאן ותתקדם מקומה. This portion, it's not in the right location in the Torah. And guess what? In the end of the days, this part is going to cut and paste in different locations in the Torah. ולמה כתבה כאן? So why it's written here in the book of Numbers chapter 10? כדי להפסיק בין פורענות ראשונה לפורענות שנייה. Because in our language the Satan will say that look at the Israelites, they constantly sin one after the others. So the Torah stopped between those different acts of sinning. But in the future, in the Messianic era, when all the evil will and the bad deeds will uprooted from the world, so that the portion will turn to the right place, which is the location of the month of the spring. Now, the Puranut Shniya Maihi. Where is the second time that he speaks about Puranut, something bad? They said Vayam Kemitonanim. The Torah said in Leviticus chapter 11 that people constantly complain. Is that sounds right?
No.
You go to any organizations, you see people complaining.
Absolutely.
Many times it's unjustifiable. It's just they like to complain. So פורענות ראשונה והאיסור מהר השם דרך 3 ימים. The first one was that they came out of the mountain of God in 3 days. And אמר רבי חנינא בן חנינא שסרו מערכי השם. He said that because they turned from God, so they hardly fled Mount Sinai. So that's the first one that they complain. Tosfot and Ramban say that they run away because they it's like a kid that's running away from school. They learn Torah and they run away. Ve'ichan mekoma, and what's the place of Ibn Soa? Amaravashi Bidgalim, chapter 2 in the book of Numbers, they speak about the flags. That's when the Jewish people travel through the desert, that's the location that it should be. Now, several comments I would like to share with you in regard to this. Number one, the Torah is not written in a chronicle order. And we said here that if it was written in a chronicle order, it's a problem, because it shows sin after sin. But at the end of the day, is no sin, so that it will be the right location. So there is a school of thought. For example, Ramban, in his introduction of the Torah, he said that King Solomon knew the whole Torah. Not just that, according to the book of Proverbs, to other sources, he knew even the language of animals. He knew a lot of things that we don't know. So they said the basic potential of a person, if he knows the entire Torah with all the esoteric part of the Torah, he can, just give you an example, in those prophets in ancient time, they can revivify the dead, meaning that he know all the secret of God's creation. The story about the great Chazon Ish, Rabbi Karelitz, a famous story, that people used to come to him with a surgeon with a complicated question over issues of making surgery for critical situation. And he all day is like the Vilna Gaon, he studied Torah all day long, and he gave the answers, and the surgeon, one after the others, so many stories that said that he was right. He never went to medical school. So once they asked him, he says that there is a Mishna at the end of Tractate Talmud that speaks about all the limbs. And the Chazon Ish study each Mishnah, who knows how many endless times, and he get to him in such a level that he gets all the concept from the very beginning to the end. Which means, if someone look at the Torah in such a level and dig in, it's all depend how you study. You can expose to a lot of things that such as how God created the human, how human body is functioning, etc., how is animal functioning, etc. If you look at the Torah, there is a lot of wisdom. The Mishnah said that the 6th chapter of the Ethics of the Father, they said that if someone dig in the Torah, he can learn a lot of secrets. Someone showed me an article in Korea now. There is a schools that try to teach people Talmud, because they feel that in that is a lot of wisdom, and they can learn those wisdom. I think they have a long way to go, but it's good beginning. Anyway, they said here that they, at the end of the days, will be able to know, since there's no sinning, they take it and put it in the right location. Ibailehu, הגליונים של ספר תורה מצילים אותם מפני הדלקה או אין מצילים אותם. If you look carefully at the Sefer Torah, you see that there are pages that empty, which means the scribe take the scroll, he put a line on those scrolls. There are two types of scrolls we discussed many times. One, they put an oil, it's called mashuach, so that it's maintained, and one, it's written directly on the parchment. But part of the process, he put it, and there is one comma at the very beginning, one comma at the end, and there are spots that there is like a full page empty. So the question is, God forbid if there is a fire on Shabbat, should we, in regard to blank folies of the parchment of the Torah scroll, does one rescue them from the Shabbat or does not rescue them? Because again, the whole question is how we treated that part. So we derived that from another source that said as follows: Tashma Sefer Torah Shebala. You have a Sefer Torah that over the years trace a situation. You have a shul that they have many Sefer Torah, and one of the things they said, Hakol talui b'mazal, afilu Sefer Torah sheba'echal. Everything depends on the mazal, meaning and the good fortunate in that sense. even the Sefer Torah in the ark. So as much as the Gaboim try to rotate the Sefer Torah, the reality is that there are certain Sforim, certain books, scroll, that not in use, maybe once, twice a year. So what happened over the time, this Torah is decay, it's filled up with dust, the letters deteriorating, and then it's sometimes not even worth it to go ahead and fix it. So how you treat this type of Torah? So the GEMARA said, if the Torah scroll was worn, so im yesh bo lelaket 85 otiyot, if it is compiled 85 complete letters, an example, kegon parashat Vayhi ben Soharon, as an example is the small portion of what we just read when the ark rested, when the ark traveled. Matzilim, v'im la ben matzilim, we should rescue. Otherwise, we don't. Ve'amai. So the GEMARA asks, why we are not saving it if it's fewer than the 85? Tipok le mishum gileon delay balashan. The Torah scroll is worn is different because at that portion its sanctity is neglected and its blank foil are not sacred. So therefore one may rescue the scroll only if it contains 85 letters. Clear? Now the next one, they said Tashma Sefer Torah shenimchak, if the Torah scroll was erased. So what's the question? I'll give you several things. Soon we see an example. Question that the Noida Biuda was asked. The great Rabbi Lender of in those years, the Czechoslovakia was the chief rabbi, genius rabbi, and they asked him a question. The question is, what do you do if the Sefer Torah erased? Can you take that parchment and write Megillah to Esther? In the Megillah, you do not have the name of Hashem. It's still a scroll. Can you do that? So, before we answer, let's see first what the GEMARA said, because that was his source. He said, Sefer Torah שנמחק אם יש בו ללקט 85 אותיות כגון פרשת ויהי בן סוהרון מצילין ואם לאו אין מצילין. What we said, that if they have at least 85 letters, such as that portion we just mentioned, ויהי בן סוהר, so he said, if not, והמאי תפוק למשום גיליון D-Day, so maybe this scroll may be rescued due to its blank foil, and the erased section is surely no less significant than the black foil of the scroll. So the GEMARA answer says, Mekom haktav lo kami ba'alei. So they said the writing is gone, its sanctity is gone. So the chi kadosh agav ktav hu the kadosh. The Rishonim explained that the whole idea of sanctity of Sefer Torah, it's because of its letters, not because of the foils, not because of the parchment, because of the letters that is written on the Torah. Azal ktav azda bekdushatei. So if the writing is gone, the sanctity is gone. So if the sanctity is gone, since in those years they used to write all the scroll, all the sacred documents, they used to write it on a scroll. So there is a famous GEMARA in Bava Batra 13 that said that they always have, when they write the Sefer Torah, has to have a section that it's empty. In order to do Gelila, when to roll it, and at the beginning and the end, to leave a space. So here they carry a sanctity. Kika miba'elei shel mala v'shel mata. The question is not the first part and the second part of the Torah, but if you look at the Sefer Torah, you see at the top of the page, the bottom of the page, v'sheben parasha leparasha v'sheben daf ledaf, between each paragraphs, and the empty spot between each column, שבתחילת הספר ובסוף הספר. So the beginning and at the end. So all of that in regard to rescue on Shabbat. But Talmud Rabbi Yehuda said that Sefer Torah carries sanctity, even the empty part, and even if it's a fire, you don't have the obligation to rescue the empty part, but they still carry the sanctity of Sefer Torah. So he said, in regard to our question with Megillah, the Talmud Rabbi Yehuda said that you can do it because it's Kedusha Kala, the level of sanctity is lower than the level of sanctity of Sefer Torah, because the Megillah doesn't carry the name of God. V'teipo klei mishum hahu. So now we ask, maybe you should just save the Torah because of those gilyonot, of those the area that is blank, whose sanctity remains. So the Gemara replies, the guy is ushdi. He said that referring to where the blank area was cut and thrown out, and all that remains in the place of the writing. So that's a situation that you can't do much. Tashma. So the Mishna said in Yadayim, and now we learn another important halacha. הגליונים של מעלה ושל מטה, ושבין פרשה לפרשה ושבין דף לדף בשחד עשר לסוף הזה מטמאים את הידיים. Now we ask a question over the purity and state of impurity. We have an halacha that it's called tum'at yadayim, that the hands that touch are ritually impure or pure. Meaning, there is a important halacha that say that those hands that touch a scroll, if they are impure instead of impurity, so they make whatever they touch impure. Such as, trace a situation, if a person touch a corpse, then he is in a sense contain the state of impurity, and if you go ahead and touch the Sefer Torah, or he touch the truma, the contribution, the offering that was given in the temple, it carries that state of impurity, and in our simple language is like contagious. It's go to the next step. So now we said that even those spots, such as the empty spot, such as the spot between the paragraph, between pages, at the beginning, at the end, it's all make the hands, render the hands that touch them impure. So what we learn, that the blank foils have the sanctity of the Torah scroll itself, the same. So now you see the opposite. Earlier what we said that doesn't carry the same sanctity, now you see when it's come to ritual impurity, it's carry the sanctity. They said, Dilma agav sefer Torah shani. So they said, no, that's not proof. Why? Perhaps when it is part of the Sefer Torah scroll is different, which means that in this type of situations, the sanctity of Sefer Torah extends to the black portion. But if you have it by itself, is no sanctity. Tashma. הגליונים וספרי מינים אין מצילים אותם מפני הדלקה. Now, since we talk about Sefer Torah, so we ask another question. How about the scroll, Torah scroll of heretics? The Meiri said that that category includes both Jewish sacred books written by heretics and sectarian writings, and the latter contain verses from the Torah with the name of God, but it's written by people who are idol worshippers, for example. So they said, Ein matzilin otam mipnei adleka. When it's a fire on Shabbat, they don't carry the sanctity, and one does not rescue them from the fire. אלא נשרפים במקומם הן והזכרותיהם. So what you have to do, you have to let them burn in the place, they and the name of God that they contain there. מה אליו לגיליונים בספר תורה? That apply to what? You think that it's not referring to the blank foils of the Torah scroll? לא, גיליונים בספר מינים. They talk about the scrolls of the heretics. You just said that you don't save the books, that the scrolls that are written by heretics, and now you're asking about this empty spot. So they said, which means that the scrolls that of heretics are like a blank folios, which means that they have carry no any type of sanctity. So Rashi said, what is the situation? If you have Shana or Piresh, if you have someone who studied Torah and then he turned around and became a heretic, so that's writing carry no sanctity. It happened, unfortunately, in our history. Some people did it. People who are in the Torah world and then they turn around and become a heretic. So their writings carry no sanctity. The Ritva said that that's applied to the New Testament, or anything that the disciples of a Christian Messiah, right? So any one of those writings carry no sanctity. Okay, גופה. הגיליונים וספרי מדין אין מצילים אותם מפני הדלקה בשבת. They said with regard to blank foils and the Torah scrolls of the heretics, one does not rescue them from the fire on Shabbat. רבי יוסי אומר, בכל קודר את האזכרות שבהם, גונזן והשאר סופר. Rabbi Yossi said, during the week, guess what you have to do? One cuts the name of God contained in those scrolls and bury them and burn the rest. So Rabbi Tarfon disagree, and אמר רבי טרפון, אקפח את בניי שאם יבואו לידי שאני אשרוף. He said, God forbid, he said to himself, I even lose my sons. In other words, he's like brought a curse upon himself that if I have this type of writing, and I make sure that they burn, meaning I'm not going to cut those parts that carry the name of God. אותם ואת האזכרות שלהם, everything, them and the names contained there, everything. שאפילו אדם רודף אחריו להורגו, he meant to say that even if a person pursuing him with the intent to kill him, and ונחש רץ להקישו, and the snake is hurrying to bite him, נכנס לבית עבודה זרה, ונכנס לבתיהן של אלו. So one should go even the house of idol worshippers and not the houses of these heretics, which means he holds that those heretics are worse than idol worshippers. שהללו מכירים וכופרים והללו אין מכירים וכופרים בו, because the heretics know about God and they turn around and they are heretics, versus those who worship idols that they have no clue what they are doing, and they just raised that way and they learn from the Father and they have no clue what they are doing. ועליהם הכתוב אומר, and that's what Isaiah said in chapter 57, ואחר הדלת והמזוזה שמת זיכרונך, and behind the door of the doorpost you place your memory, which, although they remember the word of God, they treated in such a way as they're casting it behind the door. So there's a big discussion in a book by Maharam Shik. He asked, what about the New Testament? Or, for example, in those years that it was a printer era. So you know that 1484 in Gothenburg, it was the first printing of King James. And then they have all the time that Christians publish Talmud and publish other Jewish books. So it's Maharam Shik has a long discussion what to do. So it's a famous question came to Rabbi Abramsky, which is the giant Torah scholar in the past generation. So he said the proper halacha is neither geniza, not burning. You just dig in the ground and bury them, just like that. Not geniza and not burning. So someone asked him why. So Rabbi Avramsky said something that I think is brilliant. He said, one time he taught a class in a big yeshiva, And it was a student that stood up and started challenging everything he said. So he answered each question, and then when the class was over, Rabbi Abramsky turned to that student and asked him, all your questions are brilliant, and I saw you using a paper. What is that? So he said, I'll be honest with you. He said, you know what happened? He said, we have a Geniza in Yeshiva. And I saw like a manuscript, handwriting, the Geniza, with those questions. And I figured out it was only a list of questions with no answers. And it's a relatively fresh papers, but it's in a Geniza. So I use it to challenge all the shiur, all the lesson we studied today. So Rabbi Avramsky looked at him and he said, guess what? I wrote it, all those questions, while I'm preparing the class. And then I have all the answers, and I trash it. But since I wrote a lot of Divrei Torah, I put it in the Geniza. So he said, here is the problem. If you put a book like New Testament or the Christians writing of the Shas in a regular Geniza, then God forbid, you know what happened? The next generation will dig in the Geniza. And they found those books. And they said, oh, guess what? That's the roots, that's the sources. And whoever understand. Amar Rabbi Ishmael, Kal Vachomer. We can learn it with the Kal Vachomer. We learn it by the fact that the name of God in the scrolls of heretics may be burned, can be derived through the Kal Vachomer as follows. ומה לעשות שלום בין איש לאשתו, אמרה תורה מי נכווה בקדושה אחרי על המים, הללו שמטילים קנאה ואיבה ותחרות בין ישראל לאבים שבשמיים, על אחת כמה וכמה. So he said, the Torah tells us in the Parashat Naso in the Sotah that if the wife, husband and wife, and one they suspected that to be unfaithful, so the ritual that the Torah that time suggested was the Kohen, the priest, need to take a scroll and inscribe the name of God and put it in the water, and it's the whole ritual, and let her drink it. So by drinking it, it's basically the name of God, it's erased, because you put it on a scroll in a parchment and then you combine it with water, so the name of Hashem erased. But in a way, the GEMARA said that God said it's worth it even to erase my name in order to bestow peace between husband and wife. So now they said, think about it. If in order to bestow peace between husband and wife, God said my name that was written with all the sanctity can be erased in the water in order to bestow peace, those people who created hatred and bigotry and animosity between God and the children of Israel, how much so? V'alehem Amar David, and that's exactly what King David said, Halo mesan'echa Hashem esna ובמתקוממך את קוטה תחליץ נסלטים לאויבים היו לי. King David said in the book of Psalms, for I hate those who hate you, God, and I fight those who rise against you. I hate them with the utmost hatred, and they have become enemies to me. So, just a side story. Once in the Brisker of one of the great Lithuanian rabbi, so it was a Jew that was very much highly appreciated in Russia. It's a long story about his life. His name is Label Trotsky. Those who know Russian history, it was a very influential Jew in Russia, in the Red Army, etc. So he was a tremendous speaker, a man above and beyond average. It's a long story how they brought him to the cheder, they cannot pay tuition, and he was out, etc. It's a long story how he went out of the upbringing. But anyway, some student went once to hear him, and they came back to yeshiva, and the Brisker Rav asked them, "Where are you?" And they said, "Look, well, we don't go to a theater, we don't go to watch a movie, so we went to hear this heretic, this Label Trotsky." So he quoted them that sentence. This what King David said, that sentence. For I hate those who hate you, God, and I fight those who rise against you. I hate them with the utmost hatred, and they become enemies to me. So he said, what we learn, כשם שאין מצילין אותם מפני הדלקה, כך הם מצילים אותם לא מן המפולת ולא מן המים ולא מדבר המאבדן. So the same way that the scroll of heretics are not rescued from the fire, neither are they rescued from the rock slide, nor from water, nor from any other matter that destroy them. So the Tosfot said here that we speak about Shabbat. So you may think that only from fire we don't rescue them, because you may person while doing that he start extinguishing the fire, which is a violation. But they're allowed to save those scrolls because they carry sanctity. But here is a different, because you don't need to rescue them under any circumstance. בא מן יוסף בר חנין מרבי אבאו, הנסיפרי דבית אבידן, מצילין אותם מפני הדלקה, אין מצילים אותם. It was a spot called Avidan, and it's happened unfortunately many times in Jewish history, that the people who are heretics forcefully ask the rabbi to go and have a public disputation with them. So there are several schools of thought. There are those who said that it was not really a house of worship, but like the Ran said and Tosfot, but it was a place that a lot of scholars from different nations gathered together, and it was in that place a lot of also sacred books, and you don't know if it was written by a God-fearing Jew or not, and therefore that's the question here. But anyway, Rabbi Abahu answered and said, "Ein velav verafya biyadei." No, what do you do? What do you know? What he answered them? What did he say?
Abahu is uncertain.
How he said it? He said, "Ein velav verafya biyadei." Sometimes yes, sometimes not, and for sure it's maybe. That's what he answered. Which means that it's a complicated, it's a very wide. So you see an examples. Rav lo azil leveit avidan, v'chol shekem leveit natzrefei. Anytime they're having gathering of those quote-unquote scholars, Rav avoiding himself all kind of excuses. He find pretext why he cannot go there to all those discussions. And for sure not to the places that suspected of idol worshippers. Shmuel levei natzrefei lo azil levei avidan azil. Shmuel, which is again a giant, used to go to a place of Avidan that they have discussion, but not the other one, Bet Natzrefei. Amru le Rava. So one time those heretics said to the giant scholar Rava, "My tama lo atit leveit Avidan." Why we didn't see you in a place that we have those disputations? Amarlu dikla planya ika beocha vekasheli. He says that there's a big palm tree on the way, and they have a lot of roots around. So it's very hard for me to walk all this way and pass by that tree. So they said to him, "Ma'akrei, what's the big deal? Let us uproot it so that you can come." He says, duchte kasheri. If you do that, then there's a hole in the ground, and again it will be hard for me to walk. So for sure, he just tried to run away. It's like the Rashi said here that you cannot win with them. There's always fear that they could do a harm to you. Rashi said it in an extreme way. Rashi again, remember, he lived at the era of the first crusade. He said that go worse either way. You never win. Because if you really won, Rashi said, they'll find a way to kill you. You're too smart, they don't like it. Yeah. And if you lose, so they said that you are lost, so it's a bad name for the Jews. So either way, you don't go there. You find all the excuses not to go and involve with all of that, because they always find something to say. So it reminds me the saying that as long as we are underdog, is a Shoah, it's a terrible thing. Oh, Rachmanus and the Jewish people, they should have the states. The minute the Jewish people rise up and they have their own independent state and they have their own self-confidence, oh, that's not good. So they like us as long as we are underdog and suffering, so then they have a reason for us to survive, to exist. So anyway, here, Mar Bar Yosef, Amar Ana, Minayu Ana. It was one rabbi that said, no, don't worry about me. I am one of their friends. I'll go there and I have this disputation, and don't worry, everything will be just fine. Velo mistafinu minai. I'm not afraid of them. They are buddies with him. Zim nachada asil ba'u lesikune. Guess what happened? One time he went there, he almost get killed. So in other words, the buddies, the friends, until you win the game. The minute you win the disputation, then you're in trouble. It reminds me so much. Later in the years, in 1263, it was in the city of Barcelona. It was a fellow Jew that turned to be a Christian priest, and Pablo Cristiani, he changed his name, and then he forced the king of Spain to have a disputation, and we forced Nachmanides to go and have a disputation. And then the disputation took place in Barcelona in 1263, and it was 3 days. Now there are two versions. There is a Jewish version and there are their version. The Jewish version said that Nachmanides won big time, and it went so good that Philip IX, who basically initiated that or forced him because of Pablo, came and gave him cash money and tell him to get out of the country, otherwise he will be killed. And Ramban, at the age of 72, he fled to Eretz Israel. Now, the background that Ramban wrote for that was because he won in that 3 days disputation, and he wrote it in a Sefer HaVikuach, in a special book. And the story goes that it was right before the festival of Shavuot, and then he displayed in his shul the whole background of that winning of the Vikuach, of the disputation. And as a result, Pablo challenged that, and he said that part of the agreement is not to talk afterward, and that's the reason he wants to get rid of him. But anyway, it was a tremendous bigotry and animosity, and he was forced out. For sure, they have their version, which one of the scholars, his name is Arthur Cohen, wrote in his book, and he said that they hold that they won it. But anyway, if they won, how come Ramban was fled for his life outside at the age of 72, especially the head of the whole Jewish community need to flee after 3 days of disputation, which again goes to show you that you never win in those situations. If they control the country and everything, you cannot win in this type of situation. Aima Shalom, that's a famous story. Devitu de Rabbi Eliezer, Achatei de Rabban Gamliel Hava, Hava hu philosopha beshibevutei, which means they live next door was either a philosopher or one of the people who was wise among the other nations, or according to other interpretation like the Masoret Hashas or Tosfot, they say they hold that he was a astrologer. That he was disseminated about himself, the reputation that he does not accept bribes. Fine. So Rabban Gamliel and Ima Shalom wants to mock him and reveal his true nature. So what did he do? So they gave him. She privately gave him a golden lamp, and she and her brother came before him, approaching him as if they were seeking judgment. Oh, I want to have an equal right. She said to the philosopher, I want to share in the inheritance of my father's estate. It's all made up. So he said to them, divide. So Rabban Gamliel said to him, what is written now in Torah, in a situation where there is a son, the daughter does not inherit. אמר לי, מיום הדגלתו מהרעון נתן לי תורתה למשה ותהיבי לתבון גיליון. וכתיב ברא וברתה כאחד הירטון. So the philosopher said to him, since the day that you were exiled from your land, the Torah of Moses was taken away, and a Avon Gilayon was given in a place. So it's written in that Avon Gilayon that he made up, he said, a son and a daughter shall inherit alike. Well, so what did they do to him? So the next day, Rabban Gamliel brought him, the philosopher, a Libyan donkey, which means he bribed him. So afterward, Rabban Gamliel and his sisters came before the philosopher for a judgment. אמר לו, שפלץ לסייד אבון גיליון וכתב בי, אנא לה למפחד מנורייתא דמשה עתיתי ולה לא אוספה לאורייתא משה עתיתי. So he said to them, I proceeded to the end of that new book, Avon Gilayon, and it's written, I, Avon Gilayon, did not come to subtract from the Torah of Moses and did not come to add for the Torah of Moses. And therefore it's written there in a situation where the son, the daughter, does not inherit. So she said to him, may your light shine like a lamp, alluding to the lamp she had given him. So Amar le Rabban Gamliel, Atachama uvatash l'shra. Gamliel said to him, the donkey came and kicked the lamp, thereby revealing the entire episode. So that's one story. But then he said, the Maharsha said, sometimes you don't need to give the bribe, you just need to promise. Like in politics, you just need to promise, and that's enough. But Rashi said that for sure we are forbidden for all this type of bribe. The Ramban tells us in the Bereshit Lamedalet, in the Genesis 34, he said that even for a non-Jewish judge, we're not allowed to give any form of bribe, because it's included in the prohibition. You should not put a stumbling block before a blind person. So it's clear that that prohibition applies by all means to Jews and non-Jews as far as the bribing. So we learn in Mishnah why does not read from the writing on Shabbat. You remember in the Mishnah we discussed yesterday that they have the Beit HaMidrash, that people come and hear Isu Veheter. The rabbi is talking about the practical halachot, and it's crucial for people to learn instead of just study nice stories in the writings, because the writing, it's nice and it's sacred, but it's uncomparable to the value of hearing a shiur from the Rabbani, from the rabbis. So they said, well, אמר רב לא שנו לה בזמן בית המדרש, אבל שלא בזמן המדרש קוראים. So he said, all of that apply only when the hour of study of the whole. But when it's not study of the whole, so you can read for them. ושמואל אמר, אפילו שלא בזמן בית המדרש הם קוראים. Shmuel said, even not the time of study, you should not read from those writings. איני והנהרדה אתרי שמואל אבא. That's big city of learning was Naharda, that Shmuel lived there. Naharda Pas Kesida B'Ktuvim Hilchot Shabbat, and in that city they used to read like Haftarah in Mincha on Shabbat, which we don't do, but that was the place that they do it. The Rabbi Gaon mentioned that. אלא יתמר אחי יתמר, אמר רב לא שנו אלא במקום בית המדרש, אבל שלא במקום בית המדרש קוראים. He said, if there is a choice between go to a shiur, to a study, and you learn all the halachot versus reading from that nice writings of the Tanakh, is you have the obligation to go to the shiur. שמואל אמר, בין במקום את המדרש, בין במקום של המדרש, בזמן שהמקדש הם קוראים, שלא בין המדרש קוראים. He says, I agree with you only if it's a important learning that makes a difference in halachot. But other than that, I don't see a problem. I see only if that avoiding or delaying people from listening. Otherwise not. As the Shmuel explained it, and he said, as we said that in his city, Naharda, they used to have those psukim and mincha in Shabbat. Ravashi amar leolam kidei amaran mi'ikara. Ravashi said actually the dispute is, and is stated initially, and Shmuel Rabbi Nechemia. Shmuel said in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Nechemia. דתניא, אף על פי שאמרו כתבי קודש הם קוראים בהם, אבל שונים בהם ודורשים בהם. So even though the sages said that in regard to sacred writing, they may not be read on Shabbat, one may study the midrash on them and teach them before the congregation. נצרך לפסוק, מביא ורואה בו. If he needs to bring a source, he bring the verse and it's written, and bring the book and look at it. רבי נחמיה, מפני מה אמרו כתבי הקודש קוראים בהם, כדי שאמרו בכתבי הקודש הם קוראים, בכל שכם בשתי עדותות. He says the reason, he says, why didn't he say that the sacred writing are not read on Shabbat? So that people will say sacred writings may not be read. But all the more so in the case of the ordinary documents, which means they contain the letters. So therefore, according to Rabbi Nehemiah, reading any sacred writings on Shabbat is prohibited, so that people refrain from reading the non-sacred documents on Shabbat. So it was not prohibited to encourage attendance to the study hall, and Shmuel himself does not hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Nehemiah. And that's the way Rashi said. But Bala Ma'or and other, the Bet Yosef and Orach Chaim Shin Zayin, all of them said that in nowadays, since Shabbat morning is not the shiur, usually the shiur usually in most of the synagogue it's the different time, so therefore you can go ahead and whatever it's not a shiur, you can go ahead and read from the writings. The next Mishnah dealing first with a situation that you have a sacred document but have a different level of sanctity, such as take for example Sfaradim. If you look at the Sephardic Torah, so it contains a special beautiful box that the Torah is in that box. So that box is not just a regular box, even is no longer used for Torah, it still carries sanctity in some level. So now the question is, what do you do with that box when you need to rescue? Should you pull out just the scroll, or you should save the scroll and the box? מצילין תיק הספר עם הספר, ותיק התפילין עם התפילין, ואף על פי שיש בתוכם מעות. One may rescue the casting of Torah scroll from fire on Shabbat together with the Torah scroll, and the casting of tefillin, casing of tefillin along with the tefillin, even if they have money inside them. In those days, especially again and again, you see a lot of poverty, so people put in the box of tefillin also sometimes the coins they need for the daily life. ולאחד מצילים אותם, there's another halacha where they should rescue them, למבוי שאינו מפולש, in the alley that it's closed, which is surrounded in three sides, it's considered a רשות היחיד, a private domain by Torah law. Ben Betera אומר אף למפולש, Ben Betera said even to an open alley, and the GEMARA later explained the difference. תנו רבנן 14 שחל להיות בשבת מפשיטים את הפסח עד החזה דברי רבי ישמעאל בן נוח רבי יוחנן בן רוקה וחכמים מפשיטים את כולו. So they learn in תוספת עם פסחים that the sages thought if the day of 14 of Nisan occurred on Shabbat, so they have the Passover lamb, so the Passover lamb is offered but not roasted until the Shabbat ends. One flays the Pesach lamb up to the breast to enable removal the part of the animals that are offered on the altar on Shabbat. And then that's the statement of Rabban Gamliel, son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, and the sages said, "Mafshitin et kula." One flays it in its eternity, no, the entire korban. So in a regular year, when the eve of Passover occurred on the regular day, so all those people that used to go olei regel, that people went to bring the Passover, so they brought the offering on a special hanging in the courtyard. So, and then they take off all the part of the meat until they breast, and then and it was allowed even on Shabbat. Why? Because לצורך גבוה. So the Bishlam al Rabbi Yishmael b'no Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka להתוועד לצורך גבוה, אל רבנן מאיתמה. So granted, according to opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, who said that one may flay only part of the animal, so we understand this halacha. Since it's already been used for a divine purpose, having its blood sprinkled in the altar, and the animal is no longer should be flayed, But according to the rabbis, what's the reason? אמר רבא בר חנא אמר רבי יוחנן דאמר קרא כל פעל השם למענהו. They said in Proverbs, all that God has made for his sake, meaning that the prohibited action is only permitted if its performance honor God. And here, what's the manifestation for his name's sake? Rav Yosef Amar shelo yasriach. Rav Yosef said that it's allowed because the sacrifice will not carry a bad odor. Rava Amar shelo yikodesh shamayim u'tevim kenevela. Rava said that because you take this sacred sacrifice and will not left in disgrace like a half-stripped animal caress left unattended. In order to avoid that, so you have to have it. If you remember, I said the other day that anytime you have a corpse, you have a dead body, even a people, so there is a shomer, there is a guard, need to be there not to leave it alone. So again, you see the whole concept that you don't leave it left unattended. My benayu, what's the difference between them? What is the practical difference between the both? So the one answer is that there is a when the Passover lamb is laid on the golden table, so there is a concern that it carry a bad odor, and although there is no element of disgrace, but still iname yoma de astana, or another one, it's the day called northern wind, which means that there is no concern that will putrefy, which means they carry, but there is a concern of disgracing the sacrifice. What's this pasuk meant? So the idea is that we learn from that sentence that if it was not for part of offer on the altar, before removing the hide, by puncturing the hide of the animal and removing the fat, although the opening, so that's the whole purpose of that line. So the reason is because the hairs, so that not become entangled in the sacrifice part and distort them. So that's what they said to him. If you tell me that you need to save the box of the scroll together with the scroll, so now you tell me why you not stripe the Pesach lamp with the skin? Midame. So he said it's not, you cannot compare, it's not comparable. Over there the rescuing, it's moving is involved. Here it's a really prohibited labor by Torah law. Rashi said both disagree with both in the two issues. They disagree with moving and they disagree with making a labor. If you're allowed to save the box of the scroll together with the scroll, so will not move the hide of the Passover lamb together with the flesh of the sacrifice should be moved with its skin and does not putrefy. So the GEMARA said, we just turn the page to 117. Midame, we cannot compare. Why? Naase basis ledavar hamutar, hachal naase basis ledavar haasur. So with regard to the Torah scroll, the casting is based on permitted object, which is the Torah scroll itself, which may be moved on Shabbat. But here, with regard to hide of the Passover lamb, the skin is based for prohibited object, which is the flesh of the sacrifice, which not be moved until the nightfall because it's not eaten all night. First we discuss the Hatzalat Gilyonim, which in rescuing a blank part of the Torah, the folios. So that's Rambam Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 23, and Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 334. Blank portion of the Torah scroll that Magen Avraham said that were existence or portion of the parchment that were erased and not rescued from the fire on Shabbat, because that dilemma is not resolved in the GEMARA, and consequently the Rif, the Rosh, the Rambam will rule stringently with that regard, because anytime, remember we said that anytime you have a teiko, we're going lechumra, going stringency. Now we talk about the impure hands. So they said the blank portion of the Torah scroll, like the scroll itself, render one's hand ritually impure. Haminin en matzilim otam. We said texts written by heretics and idolaters are not sacred. They are burned along with the divine names written on them. Needless to say, the Rambam said, they are not rescued from a fire on Shabbat. Now, how about Knisa levet avodah zara latzil atzmo? It is permitted, the Kolbo said, and also the Rema. It is permitted for a Jew to escape danger by entering a place of idolaters. Some authority states that when Jews are being persecuted, it is prohibited to do so. This halacha is based on a statement of Rabbi Tarfon. Now we learn also Piskei Sidra Biktuvim, which means they concluded with regular weekly discourse with writing. The sages issue a decree prohibiting to read the books of the writings on Shabbat during the time of a generally attended regular study lecture in the study hall. This was intended to prevent abstinence from the study hall, because the learning all the halakhot, it's improving the level of understanding and observance. We ask a question about rescuing the casing or the box of a Torah scroll. One may rescue Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 334. One may rescue the casing of a Torah scroll and the casing of other sacred writings from the fire on Shabbat, along with the scroll encased therein. The casing of tefillin may be rescued along with the tefillin. Doing so is permitted even if there is money in the casing. Mafshitin et HaPesach, in the 14th of Nisan occurred on Shabbat, the Pesach or lamb is a sacrifice that will be in the weekday. And consequently, the entire hide of the lamb is flayed in the same manner as it's done on a weekday. That's the majority of opinion in that Rambam Hilchot Korban Pesach, chapter 1.